Middle school, welcome. Welcome, hello. My name is Nick. I'm so excited to be with you. I think this is the first time I'm with you guys in Lakeville here this year. And if we haven't met before, my name is Nick. I'm one of the pastors here with our student ministries, and I'm really excited to start this new series with you tonight called Mega Quotes. Everyone say Mega Quotes. It's all about some of the coolest things that Jesus has said. So have you ever heard, let me ask you a question, have you ever heard something that totally shifted the way that you thought? Maybe they said something that made you think deeply about something you hadn't really thought of before. It can happen anywhere, anytime. It could be a line in a movie you've seen or really like. It could be a book you've read. It can even be like a conversation with your friends. But there's like a really cool way that words can change who we are. And I want to tell you about one of my favorites when I was your age was I loved Spider-Man. Who here has heard of Spider-Man before? Yeah, Spider-Man. You know, everyone do your best website. Just, yeah. Dude, I wish I was Spider-Man when I was a kid. Anyway, I thought he was super cool. I've seen all of them since like the first movie. And what I loved was even across all the movies and different comic books or TV shows or whatever, one theme always held true with Spider-Man. It's something his uncle told him. He said, with great power comes great responsibility. And I thought that it was so cool that one line could take Peter Parker, who's Spider-Man, from this like nerdy kid who just randomly gotten superpowers into like, he made him the hero, Spider-Man, right? The guy who saves the day and does all these cool things. And I thought that was super awesome because I was kind of a nerd and I definitely didn't have superpowers, obviously. But for you, it might not be Spider-Man. It might be like a favorite athlete that you have that said something really that you like or a book you've read. But there's a way that words can really change how you and me think about the world, about each other, and even about God. And so there's one person in history whose words have never, ever faded away. They've been famous for 2,000 years, and you probably can guess that it's Jesus. That's who we're talking about tonight, and some of the coolest things that he said. Jesus had so many powerful quotes. We call them mega quotes in this series. And over the next few weeks, me and a couple other pastors are going to tell you about some of the our favorite things that Jesus has ever said. And I'm really excited about it. We can learn things about him, like who he is and what he likes and what he cares about and the things that he thinks are important, and learn something about the words that have changed lives for 2,000 years and still do today. So tonight, I want to share with you one of the greatest lessons that I ever learned from something that Jesus said, and it's all about being great. So all of us want to be great. No matter what, you might say, well, I don't really care about being great. You probably do, okay? So let me explain this to you. Like, let me put it this way. Why do you do your homework? You do it because you want good grades, because you want to have something that shows colleges that you're great, or you work really hard in the gym or at practice for your sports because you want to be really good, you want to play, right? You spend a ton of times on your hobbies or your activities because deep inside of us, we all want to be really good at something. We want to be great. We don't want to be stuck in the same place forever. We want to grow and change and be better. Like, could you imagine if you were in 7th or 8th grade and you were there until you were 40? Like, that'd be a super huge bummer. You'd want to change and grow and be great. The desire to be great isn't bad, by the way. God puts it in us, but sometimes I think we think about greatness a little backwards, and so did Jesus' disciples. And so that's the story we're reading tonight. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 20. You can take a second to open there in your Bibles if you want to, otherwise it'll be on the screens. But we're setting it up in a way where Jesus is hanging out with his disciples, okay? He's been with them for a couple years. They know each other, right? They're comfortable. And all of a sudden, James and John, okay, they're two disciples, their mom comes up and asks Jesus for something. So let's read together in Matthew chapter 20, and we're actually going to start in verse 20. It says this: Then the mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus with her sons. She knelt respectfully to ask for a favor. What is your request? He asked. She replied, in your kingdom, please let my 2 sons sit in places of honor next to you, one on your right and the other on your left. Jesus answered by saying to them, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering I'm about to drink? Oh, yes, they replied, we are able. Jesus told them, you will indeed drink from my bitter cup, but I have no right to say who will sit on my right or my left. My Father has prepared those places for the ones that he has chosen. So Jesus is hanging out with his disciples, and James and John's mom comes to ask Jesus a question. Now, she asked for something that to us might not seem like a big deal, just the guys who stand next to Jesus, but she's asking for something insane, crazy. She's asking for James and John, who were two probably illiterate fishermen at the time, right, to come and when they say in the Bible, like sit on your right and your left, they're saying like to be the greatest people who follow you, right, to almost be equal with you. He's saying like, can you take these guys, my sons, and have them be your greatest followers, to do the most important things, to the most important jobs, to be the greatest? And Jesus is saying, like, that's not up to me, but that's an insane thing to ask. That's crazy. And you guys, I gotta tell you a story. My mom literally did stuff like this. Okay, I was bad at sports growing up. No matter what Michael Baker tells you or what your youth pastor tells you, they all think that I'm the greatest athlete who's ever lived. Not true. Not true, okay? I was bad at sports, and I didn't play very much, and so one time, I remember we had just finished a game. I didn't play a ton, and I was in 5th or 6th grade, and my mom starts to walk towards my coach, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's she gonna do? What's she gonna say? She starts to argue with my coach and tell him she wants me to play more. Could you imagine how embarrassing that would be if you didn't play very much, and your mom walks up to your coach, and she's like, hey, I think my son should play more. It's like, oh my gosh, my friends are making fun of me, and it was probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. James and John, though, did not agree with me that this was embarrassing. They were like, yeah, Mom, tell him I want to be the guys on Jesus' right and left. And they were asking for it a ton. They said they'd do anything for it. They said, I'm willing to do what you're going to do. Now, this reminds me, like, when I was a little older, I was playing football not playing football. I was sitting on the bench in football in high school. And there was a coach that I had who was adamant. He was like, I want you to be better at brushing your teeth than the other guys. I want you to be better at reading books. I want you to be better at talking to people. I want you to be better at every part of your life than the people that we play against. I want you to just be better, to be great. And so that's how I thought about being great. I thought it was about being better than everybody else. And James and John think like that too. And the disciples think like that too. They think that being great and following Jesus is about doing more, being better than everybody else to follow him. So Jesus is about to drop some of the hardest lines in history, so I hope you're ready. But let's keep reading in verse 24, okay? Let's keep reading to see what happens. So that conversation happens, and then they say this. When the 10 other disciples heard what James and John had asked, they were indignant, which just means they were really angry. But Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people. The officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and give his life as a ransom for many. So Jesus sees that all of his disciples are arguing, and these guys want to be really great. They ask for it, and these guys are really upset that those guys asked for it because they want that spot. And he brings them all together, and he says, okay, look, let's talk about this. He says that if you want to be the best, you have to become a slave. A slave? Like, what do you mean by that? Now, I want to start this by saying a big theme in the Bible is God does not always think like we do. Like, what comes natural to you and me may not be what God thinks about. And this is a great example of that. Like, you and me often think, right? The world around us often thinks that if we are important, that means if we want to be important, if we want to be great, we have to go as high as possible, right? We got to be the best at something, and that the people who are below us are there to help us succeed, right? And Jesus is saying that's totally backwards. That was even happening back when Jesus was around. Like, he brings up the rulers and the authorities. He's talking about like Pharisees and government officials and stuff, like people who were designed to have their authority so that they could serve and help the people below them, but they were taking advantage of their office. They were saying, I'm important, you should listen to me. And they took being high up and in authority as something that was in a value of itself. And Jesus is saying, no, you have it all wrong. If you have the most, you should use it to serve those who don't. Okay, and so here's our main point for tonight. All of this is leading up to this point, and I want to look at it together, and I want you to absorb this, okay? So this is our main point for tonight. Great people serve people. Everyone say that together. Great people serve people. And I could think of no one better to highlight, right, than your community group leaders. People who are being great. Everyone look at your community group leader right now. Everyone look at them right in the eyes. These are people who are giving up their time with their families, at home, at their jobs, because they love you. They want to serve you. They're being great. And so everyone look at your community group leader, point at him and say, you're great. This idea that to serve other people, to be great, you need to serve other people was huge for me. See, I'd gone my whole life up until this point thinking that to be great, you had to be like that person who was just better at everything else. But when I read that Jesus said to be the greatest you need to serve, it totally shifted my whole view of what greatness looked like. I started asking questions like, what does being great actually mean? Like, does it mean being great means being remembered or having people admire you, or maybe it's accomplishing really difficult goals? Maybe it's all of those things, but Jesus is saying it's not just having those things for the purpose of that, it's taking those things and using them to serve other people. Let me give you an example. Like if say you were the fastest kid in your class, like you were racing your class and you knew you could get to the first spot in the race. But instead of being the first one across the finish line, you intentionally ran back and you helped people who were farther behind. You ran next to them. You taught them how to run. You helped them finish the race. That's what being great looks like in Jesus' eyes. And this reminded me of a time I was your age, actually. I was in middle school. And like I said, I was a nerd and not good at sports. And so I didn't have a lot of friends in middle school. So that year, I was in 8th grade. I was actually sitting by myself during lunch, right? I didn't have a table to sit with, and so I sat by myself against the windows of our middle school. And there was this other kid in my class named Jaden, okay? So Jaden was not like me. He was really good at sports, and he was funny, and people liked him, and he was nice, and so he was super popular. But one thing I knew about Jaden is Jaden loved Jesus. He loved Jesus, and he wanted to be like him. I remember I was sitting alone at lunch one day, and I see Jaden walking towards me with his lunch tray. And he comes and sits down next to me, and he asked me, like, hey, can I sit with you during lunch? I was like, I guess. like, why? And I thought he would just be there for a couple minutes and then leave and go hang out with his buddies. But no, he sat there with me for, like, the full half hour we had for lunch. And he talked to me. He asked me about the things that I like to do and what I wanted to be. And he cared about me, and he was trying to be my friend. He talked to me about Jesus, and it was something there. I'm an adult. I'm 26 years old, and I still think back to 8th grade, and I remember where I was sitting in the lunchroom. I remember how Jaden looked at me. I remember that moment because in that moment, Jaden cared about me. And I think that's what Jesus means when he says, the greatest among you serve others. Now, Jesus doesn't just tell us to do this stuff and then not do it himself, right? He shows us exactly what he means. So we're going to go back to that verse and look at it one more time. So Matthew 20, verse 28, he says this. For even the Son of Man, right? So Son of Man is just the name Jesus called himself, came not to be served, but to serve others and give his life as a ransom for many. See, Jesus was God, and he didn't come back, or he didn't come to earth in a human body so he could be famous or make money or be popular. He came for like normal people like you and me. He came for people like Jaden and people like me who sat alone at lunch. He came for all of us because he was God, right? All powerful, all knowing, everywhere, all the time. The highest you could possibly be, the greatest. And then he stepped into a human body like you and me have. And he hung out with like the least of us. And that's a really cool thing. You can't get higher or lower than that. That's as big as it gets. And so students, I want to leave you with two things, okay? I want to leave you with two challenges about what it means to be great. So I want to challenge you not to think of greatness any longer as like, I want to be the best at everything all the time, and really try and change how you think into being more of, what if being great really does mean to serve others and help other people? And we can do this by doing two things, okay? The first one is by you this week. I want you personally to find a way to help somebody, to serve other people, okay? A couple ideas for this. One, every month, our student ministries goes to the Heart Warehouse and helps to serve people in need. You don't need your whole group to sign up. You don't need anything like that. You can just go. Your parents can come drop you off. It's awesome. We go on our Shakopee. It's like the third Thursday of every month. Show up. It's awesome. It's a great way to serve other people. Or in a couple years, you can go on an impact trip with us in high school. I think we have like 50 high schoolers signed up to go to different places around the world and help people. Some of them are probably your student leaders, and people in this room might be going on impact trips, and you can be one of those people. And then the second way I want you to serve is tonight when you go back to your community groups, okay? I want you to get in a circle, and I want you to make a plan for how you and your community group can serve somebody together. This might look at a million different ways. You guys make a plan for it. Something that came to mind for me. Wouldn't it be cool if you guys got together and the next time it snows, you just pick a neighborhood and you shoveled all of the driveways in the whole neighborhood? Like, that's a lot. That would be huge, right? But think of the impact it would make on this neighborhood if they look outside their windows and they just see a bunch of middle schoolers outside, like, shoveling their driveway. That's cool. Or maybe it's getting your group together and going over to the fountains and hanging out with some people who might not get visited very much and just be their friend for a little bit. That's a great way to serve, you guys. Being great means serving others. Great people serve people. Say that one more time. Great people serve people. Okay, so that's just one mega quote. Look at how much we learned about being great from just a couple sentences that Jesus said. So over the next few weeks, some other pastors are going to tell you all about their favorite things that Jesus has said. It's going to look different. It's going to be awesome. I'm really excited for this series. But for tonight, I'm going to pray, and then I want you guys to go to your community groups and talk about what it means to be great, okay? All right, let's pray. Lord, thank you for these students, for your word, the way that you teach us, Jesus. Through just a couple words, you can teach us all about what life means. Lord, help us be great in your eyes. Help us to want to serve other people and give us the desire to do so. We love you, Lord, and it's in your holy name all of God's people said, amen. All right, see you guys. Go.